Member for Naparima.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it gives me pleasure to join this debate. And listening to the member for San Fernando West, Madam Speaker, what I saw was optics over substance, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I saw what we call in Naparima zest over data and facts, Madam Speaker. I saw gallery over a factual statement of the case, Madam Speaker. I saw the preeminence of emotions. I saw a giving off of the decibel levels in an attempt to fight a weak case. Madam Speaker, listening to the member for San Fernando West, one got the impression that he was involved in this case. He was actively participating. He was concerned that we came off the watch list. But, Madam Speaker, when you look at the attendance, there were in the JSC, and I, together with my colleague from Shogunas East, and I want to compliment him on an excellent factual presentation, such that none of his points were rebutted. What we saw was an ad hominem attack on my friend. Madam Speaker, of the 13 meetings that were held, of 13 meetings, guess what? The Attorney General missed 6 of the 13 meetings. Madam Speaker, the first meeting held on the 6th of June, 6th of the 6th, and I have the attendance record, Mr. Faris Alwari, absent. The second meeting, excused, but he's very much interested, come here and gallery and zest. On the third meeting of the 7th of the 6th, he was excused. The meeting of the 25th of the 6th, he was excused again. Madam Speaker, the 8th meeting, the 6th of the 9th, he was excused, Madam Speaker. The 9th meeting, 16th of the 9th, he was excused. Madam Speaker, we have an excuse for Attorney General and a member for San Fernando West. He misled us when he said he attended all the meetings. Madam Speaker, but that absence from duty is a failing of the People's National Movement. They talk, and when there's action, they're not present. Dr. Francis Lovell was absent 7 times, 7 of the 13 meetings. Madam Speaker, I was there 11 times. My friend was there 11, and Ms. Saddam Hussein 11. We stood up to our duty. We do not come and zest. Dr. Lovell, you were absent 7 times. Thank you. The MP for Maruga Tableland, absent. Not only is he absent from his constituency, he's absent from meetings of the Joint Select Committee. Madam Speaker, Ms. Marlene McDonald, absent. The member for Port of Spain South, absent 10 times of the 13 meetings. Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarat, absent 7 times. Senator Daniel Duki, 5 times. And yet they come here and want to spin a narrative that they're concerned and willing to work hard to get us off the blacklist. Madam Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. You know why we are here today? We are here today because there is a meeting. There is a meeting in Paris that started on the 30th. It is from the 13th to the 21st. So they need in Paris a plenary meeting of the working session of Global Forum, etc. And they want to get this bill passed so that they could go there and they can say that we have passed the legislation. In doing that, they're rushing us at the last minute. But before I get to the substance of my debate, a lot of the presentation by the member for San Fernando West was ad hominem attacks on my colleague, the member for Chaguanas East. I want to tell the member for San Fernando West that my colleague from San Fernando East from Chaguanas East is a performer. He decentralized the ministry head office in agriculture in Ministry of Tertiary Education to Chaguanas. He created the UTT campus in aviation campus in Camden, Couva, and he created the phrase, the member for Chaguanas East, from cutting cane to flying cane, which talks about a first world aspiration for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The member for Chaguanas East created the El Dorado Nursing Training Academy.
Madam Speaker, Standing Order 48-1, please.
I'm responding to.
Okay, so member, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Two more. They cannot take performance. That is the problem. The Yuri Penal Debe campus. And just one more. We left them the complete building, but they're lazy and slothful to open it, Madam Speaker. And the Tobago UTT education campus, Madam Speaker. I want to correct the member for San Fernando West said that he assisted in writing a letter for the Honorable Colm Imbert, MP, Minister of Finance, to the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, Senior Counsel and MP. And he said in his presentation that they did not get a response from the United National Congress. I wish to place on record the fact that we take our job seriously. And when the Minister of Finance writes our leader responds consistent with her position and consistent with the requirement of someone who wants to take this country forward. I refer to the letter, Madam Speaker. It is dated, the letter from the leader of the opposition. It is dated 22nd November 2018. It's important that I clarify the record. And it is addressed to the Honorable Colm Imbert, MP, Minister of Finance, Level 8, Eric Williams Financial Center. The subject is Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018. And the letter says, and I'll quote in part, some parts. I refer to the bill at caption, and your letters dated 12 November 2018 and 19 November 2018 regarding same, to which this is in response. Madam Speaker, this is an 8-page response I'm referring to. I continue. I remind your good self that the opposition is committed to the passage of legislation for the peace, order, and good government of Trinidad and Tobago. During the debate on the FATCA legislation, and now in the short debate of the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018, our arguments have centered on striking the proper balance of protecting our citizens' fundamental rights and privileges, whilst at the same time complying with our international obligations. The opposition holds the view, as advanced during the short debate of this bill and during the debate on FATCA legislation, that while compliance with our international obligations is important, of even greater importance is to ensure that any legislation that is passed with a special majority pursues a legitimate aim and is proportionate. And I'll just read one other part and then I'll go to the conclusion. Unfortunately, the legislative process that preceded debate on the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 has been plagued by the identical issues that arose in the lead-up to and passage of the Tax Information Exchange Agreement, United States of America Act, FATCA legislation, and it went on to list the issues. Madam Speaker, I'll just go to the conclusion. And I have to do this because it is important that we place on record the facts relating to our position, the legitimacy, transparency, and the fact that we act responsibly at all times. And it is also an attempt to debunk the misstatements and untruths of the member for San Fernando West. And I go to the conclusion, having regard to all these concerns and deficiencies as outlined herein, it is clear that a proper discharge of our legislative duty warrants that the bill be subject to further, deeper, and intense consideration of the Joint Select Committee. Further, given the urgency of matters related to FATF, CFATF, and Global Forum compliance, we demand that the government disclose a clear timeline as to the plan to proceed with the two other bills before the GSC, namely the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill 2018 and the Tax Information Exchange Agreements 2018. Wanted a timeline. We consider it proper that all three bills be finalized in the GSC and therefore submitted to the Parliament so as to ensure consistency and uniformity of three bills. It's fully deliberated by the GSC before further debate continues. And it goes on, and it says the government has failed to properly manage the legislative process to ensure timely compliance with our international obligations. And this has resulted in irreparable damage to our country's international reputation, etc. The date of this letter is the 22nd of November, 2018, and it is signed Kamla Prasad Bisesa, SC, MP. Ladies and gentlemen. Madam Speaker, consistent with what the leader had written, I need to indicate that we at all times wanted this legislation passed, and there was no reason why this could not have been passed in 2017. Had we been in power, had we been in government, this would have been done, finished, and we would have not been the only country to be on a blacklist by the OECD. Madam Speaker, why are we here? Firstly, to clean up the 4-year incompetence, indicative of this government's inability to get us off the various watch lists, whether it's Global Forum, whether it's OECD, whether it is the EU, Madam Speaker. And I need to go to give the chronology and the history to it, to say where it all started. You see, in previous debates, they said it started with us, and they wanted to blame Minister Larry Hawaii. Madam Speaker, it all started on the 1st of March 2010, when Trinidad and Tobago underwent a Phase 1 Global Forum evaluation. Those are the facts. Who was in power, Madam Speaker, on the 1st of March 2010? The PNM. And they were given, Madam Speaker, a one-page questionnaire to fill out, and that was due on the 29th of March. They had 1 month, and that slothful PNM refused to do it. Refused, and those are irrefutable facts, Madam Speaker. On 2014, Trinidad and Tobago gave a commitment to Global Forum through Minister Larry Hawaii for increased tax transparency and a timeline for 2017 for the first exchange of information in accordance with the common reporting standards of Global Forum for Tax Transparency. It was due in 2017. Had we won the election in 2015, this would have been completed already. And the Minister of Finance cannot say that he was unaware that we were in a situation where we had to comply, because on the 9th of September 2016, he indicated, and I could quote, one of the first things I had to do when I was appointed Minister of Finance, and I took up the office around the 12th or the 13th of September last year, was to write a letter to Global Forum seeking a one-year extension to a deadline that had been given to our country, Trinidad and Tobago, to be compliant with Global Forum. And he said, we received a one-year extension to 2016. The government was also aware that Trinidad and Tobago had to undergo a fast-track review in 2017, June 2017. But you know what, Madam Speaker? We see here, I'm going to give you 2 dates. We'll see here the incompetence of the PNM government. On October 23rd, 2017, the Code of Conduct Group wrote the Minister of Finance requesting commitments and clarifications by November 17, 2017, on our status with rectifying our blacklisted position. So they wrote the Minister of Finance. He cannot deny that. And I challenge him to deny that. And they told him to respond by November 17. Guess when he responded? November 21st. 3 days after. He missed the deadline. He missed it. And Madam Speaker, I've learned when you are in Europe and you're dealing with the Europeans and the Canadians and the Americans, when they tell you 3 o'clock, they mean 3 o'clock. When they tell you the 17th, they mean the 17th. But for our slothful Minister of Finance, the 17th was the date they gave him to comply. He decided to take it on his own to respond on the 21st. And you know what that meant? That meant we were blacklisted. Even though he sent the letter late, we were blacklisted. And you know why? He failed to comply within the prescribed time by the OECD. That is the history of this incompetent PNM. But hear what, Madam Speaker. He wrote on the 21st, or the Minister of Finance, wrote on the 21st of November. He said, the Minister of Finance said that we would pass the necessary legislation to make us compliant by 31st December 2018. The Minister of Finance gave a commitment. But you see, their word is not their bond. They write and give a date, they pick any date they want, and they give commitments which they do not intend to carry out. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance committed to pass 5 pieces of legislation. 5. These included the Income Tax Amendment Bill. The minister said this should be passed by 2018, December 31st. Where are we today? We are in 2020. The Minister of Finance gave a commitment that we will pass the Double Taxation Agreements Bill. He gave a commitment that we'll pass the Companies Amendment Bill. Have we seen that in Parliament? The Companies Amendment Bill. Those are commitments sitting in the OECD that we said we will pass, and today, 2 years after, nothing. The Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters Bill, the Minister of Finance gave a commitment to pass that by 2018. And the BEPS, Inclusive Framework, by June 30th, 2019. Has anyone here seen the base erosion and profit sharing measures? That was supposed to be passed by June 2019. Madam Speaker, approved. Madam Speaker, what the slothfulness of this government, the laziness of this government. And I said that even with the meetings, they would not attend. They appointed people to collect. Well, let me not say that.
That's what they said about yours.
But you see, I come from a school, Madam Speaker. When I give my word, I give my commitment. That is a commitment. My word is my bond. So when there are meetings, I attend the meetings. I don't give excuses and then come and say, and gallery and say, I attended all. The member for San Fernando West, you did not attend most of the meetings of the Joint Select Committee.
Let the record speak.
And the record will speak. So this PNM administration gave a commitment that by 2018, they would have passed 4 pieces of legislation and a 5th in 2019. which is the BEPS on transfer pricing. And we have heard repeatedly in budget speeches, the IMF is helping us, and we're thinking about doing this, and are planning this. But what you never get from this government, never get, apart from old talk and zessing, you never get concrete deadlines by which we could commit and check them afterwards, Madam Speaker. So we were blacklisted in 2017, because when we wrote too late. We are in 2020, and they are now scampering to pass legislation, and we're still uncertain whether the passing of this legislation is going to get us off the EU blacklist. On December the 5th, 2017, the Council of the European Union stated, and I quote, Trinidad and Tobago has been attributed a rating of non-compliant by Globe Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for tax purposes, has not signed and ratified the OECD Multilateral Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters as amended, has a harmful preferential tax regime, and did not commit, Madam Speaker, commit to addressing these issues by 31st December 2018. According to the brief on the state of play, on the International Tax Transparency Standards 2017 by the OECD, several jurisdictions made sufficient changes towards meeting the exchange of information on request standard, which led to the upgrade in the overall ratings of 17 jurisdictions, not Trinidad and Tobago. And the reason is because Trinidad and Tobago at that time was governed by the People's National Movement under Prime Minister Dr. Rowley. Only one jurisdiction, Trinidad and Tobago, has a non-compliant rating against the EOIR. That is the in exchange of information on request. Madam Speaker, as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I took it on myself to do a release begging the Minister of Finance, begging the Minister, because I knew about this date, the 31st of December 2018, Madam Speaker. And it says, Charles challenges Imbert, and I'm just quoting the Honourable Member, Honourable Minister of Finance. Bring 2 tax bills to the JRC now. Stop the last-minute charade. Stop it. This is here. It's in the public domain. And I said, MP Rodney Charles is challenging the Minister Imbert to reconvene a joint select committee with haste to deliberate on the 2 additional tax bills to make Trinidad and Tobago compliant with international tax laws before December 31st EU Global Forum deadline, if indeed that is the true deadline. Madam Speaker, we're not sure what is the deadline. We hear it's a shifting goalpost. When we look at the sloth on that side, we suspect that the deadline they give us is not real, because they would have been worried. They would have been worried. They would have, why would you build 1 tax bill, take off the other 2, Madam Speaker, and then come back today, bring back the bill, what you had excised certain clauses, you bring that back, and then you bring the 2 together. And you talk about comma and full stop and whatnot. You are slothful, you are lazy, you are incompetent, you are embarrassment to Trinidad and Tobago. That's what you are. I asked the question in the same release, why does this PNM administration continue with its lackadaisical approach and characteristic sloth, Madam Speaker, in passing very important pieces of legislation? And I go down to just one last way. Is it that in similar fashion to the Income Tax Amendment Bill and also with FATCA, they are going at the very last minute to scurry? Madam Speaker, I'm a prophet, you know. This is written in the 5th December 2018. 19, 20. And I prophesied that they're going to come at the last minute and they're going to scurry to, let me get my own words, quote, to scurry to pass 2 bills when we are reviewed by the Global Forum. And I end, we are fed up of this continuing charade every time important legislation comes before this House. Fed up, fed up, fed up, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when we were given a rating of non-compliant, our CARICOM neighbors, St. Lucia, Grenada, Barbados, they were removed. But Trinidad and Tobago under this PNM remained. You have to ask yourself, what is the difference between all the other CARICOM countries and Trinidad and Tobago? The difference is we have a PNM government. How come Grenada? Madam Speaker, there's a story, There are, and the Minister of Finance, please take note, that almost every island in the Caribbean had growth rates according to the IMF reports. Growth rates of 2%, 4% and whatnot. Trinidad, minus 9.9%. We are a laughing stock in the Caribbean. Madam Speaker, I had an old $100 bill, and I think it's the same with the new $100 bill. I left it in St. Lucia on a table by mistake, and I was scampering, left it on Friday, scampering on Monday to get the $100 bill. The people left it there. They're laughing at Trinidad $100 bill. Had no value. They laugh at us, Madam Speaker. They laugh at Speaker. Madam Speaker, in the Joint Select Committee meeting, on the Joint Select meeting on August 29, 2018, I asked what list we would be on or upgraded to if we passed the income tax amendment bill. But the chairman could not give a definitive answer, Madam Speaker. The verbatim notes from that meeting was as follows. Mr. Chairman, I asked, he said, the chairman, we will be upgraded. I asked, you have that in writing? The chairman said, well, I have, and he fumbled and obfuscated. And so I indicated the reason why I'm asking is to make sure that the limited time we have, we work in such a way that it will result in us coming off the list. We do not want to pass this and then find out that we are not taken off the blacklist. Typical of the PNM, unable to give facts. Typical of the Dr. Rowley PNM. Because the PNM is better than this, Madam Speaker. I was a PNM. And this is not the PNM. This is not the PNM. Madam, that is a sin that I have to deal with my Maker. I have to get down to my Maker and say, Lord, I have sinned. I was PNM. Forgive me, because you have said, as long as you see the light and you're baptized, not as you're baptized in Lavantil West. You're baptized. You shall be forgiven. So I am living in the hope that in the judgment day, that sin would have been excised from me, Madam Speaker. The EU outlined 3 major criteria needed to be addressed in order, you say I'll be forgiven, in order for Trinidad and Tobago to become compliant. Criteria, tax transparency, 1. 2, fair taxation. 3, implementation of the anti-base erosion and profit-sharing measures. Madam Speaker, they are yet to say that this legislation will definitely result in compliance. In Hansard, on 25th May, the Minister of Finance said, and I quote, to become compliant with Global Forum, EU and FATF requirements, Trinidad is required to have in place the legislative framework that would allow for the exchange of information and the administrative structure for that exchange. In this regard, 2 related bills have been laid before this House to address the many deficiencies, namely the Income Tax Amendment Bill and the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Bill 2018. That's Hansard, May 26, 2018, page 110. The bills were referred to the Joint Select Committee. The Joint Select Committee's work was incomplete, as it only reported on 1 bill, the Income Tax Amendment Bill, and we had to reconvene the committee to deal with the other bills, as well as make further changes to the Income Tax Bill. Does this sound to you, Madam Speaker, like someone anxious for our country to get off a watch list? Madam Speaker, this is work. We could have done this in 4 months. A UNC government would have got us off the watch list in 4 months. A lazy, incompetent, clueless PNM will take 4 years, Madam Speaker. And they come here and gallery and talk, and that is why we don't have a record of winning cases in the Privy Council, where you need facts You do need zest. You have to state your case. State your case, provide facts. You don't go and zest in the Privy Council and gallery. You could come in this parliament and do that and get away with it, perhaps. Madam Speaker, first they brought one piece of legislation, the Income Tax Amendment Bill. They chose to...
The initial speaking time is now spent. You're entitled 15 more minutes to wind up.
All right, thank you, madam. They chose to rush it to completion, claiming that it would take us off the non-compliant list, Madam Speaker. Then they returned the bill and removed the sections which required a 3/5 majority. They did not address the two other bills, and today we are here now with 3 bills. They brought back the original bill, the income tax bill, inclusive of the sections that were previously removed. They don't know what they're doing. As usual, they rush, and wait until the last minute to bring in important legislation to the House. Madam Speaker, they now come in haste to pass this legislation, only giving us 5 days to look. And notwithstanding the fact that we were on the Joint Select Committee, we have other members. They have perspective. They have a big caucus. But we had 5 days, of which 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. So we had 2 days really. They have failed to remove us from the blacklist and continue to display their gross incompetence. We are here to make up for the sloth and incompetence. Between 16th, I mentioned this, but it's worth for the facts, between the 16th and 21st of February, there will be a FATF working group plenary session in Paris, where Trinidad and Tobago will be assessed based on a visit earlier this year. I presume that the Attorney General will be leaving, presumably tomorrow, to attend this session. And that's why he's panicking. He wants to know, no, what is your position? There's a process, my friend. There is a process when we are required to say what we will do, and we will not be bullied. We are an incompetent government that operates by process. So the AG will presumably tomorrow to attend this session. And here we are today, on the eve of his intended attendance, trying to pass this legislation so that we could get off the blacklist. But we can see clearly how flippant and half-hearted the government was in getting the work done for this bill.
You come here and tell this parliament we on blacklist so we don't get on your
Madam Speaker, so slothful.
Tell him which blacklist, please. He doesn't seem to know.
The
asking
EU
which blacklist.
OECD Global Forum. Madam Speaker, so slothful are they that clause 6 of the application of the Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, 2018, that states that the legislation in the bill that we have before us will be retroactive to 1st January 2017, which was on the date on which they gave the commitment. So they gave a commitment, they couldn't keep it for whatever reason, passed legislation today, but because they gave the commitment, we have to have a retroactivity clause in the legislation before us.
We gave the
Madam?
2017 date.
And we gave the 2017 date. Madam, you know this PNM administration, they are not up to the task of representing the best of us. That is why wherever you go, we are missing in action. Madam Speaker, I want to place on record that I had to write a letter. I think my colleague wrote it. I had to write a letter to say that for almost 3 months, we had no meeting. And they will come and pretend that the letter didn't exist, and I didn't impress upon them the need to be urgent about this thing, because we on this side know the implications of if we are not on the watch list. So we had to wake them up from their sluggishness and their slumber. One might even get the impression that they just held the meetings just so that I couldn't criticize them further, because there's a flurry of meetings afterwards. After I wrote the letter, they waited 1 month to wake up, and then there's a flurry of meetings, of which the Attorney General and others, member for table, and missed most of them. Madam Speaker, so were they sluggish in calling meetings, that even when meetings were called, some lasted less than half an hour. This is an important thing, important set of bills. The 6th June 2018, you know how long the meeting lasted? 15 minutes. Come here and zest. Don't zest on me. January 25th, 2019, 25 minutes.
You will just back.
That's a hurry by the time you sit down and shift around the meeting finish. June 7th, 19 minutes. This is thing that we serious thing about the country's future, and they come and talk. We can't get credit cards, and our children up there can't enter into banking arrangements and get bank accounts. June 25th, you know how long that meeting was? This is the record.
What year? What June 25th one?
June 25th, 2019. That meeting lasted, guess, 13 minutes. 5-5-3. 13 minutes. Serious things, serious matters of national import, treated flippantly and coming and blaming the opposition for the lethargy and slot on that side. September the 6th, well, they made a record, 41 minutes. And September 16, they're going back down, 31 minutes. On top of that, they continue to give us little time to go through important pieces of legislation. This Joint Select Committee, we got 5 days, of which 2 Saturday and Sunday. And today is half day, so we got 2.5 days. The Bail Amendment, Bill number 2 of 2019, 5 days. The Administration of Justice Indictable Proceedings, Amendment number 3, Bill 2019, 5 days. The gambling bill, 5 days, I imagine. But the Interception of Communications Amendment Bill, my colleagues in the Senate said they got 1 week. What it is, you don't want us to scrutinize? Because you have a hurry set of legislation, you are scared of the full view and focus on the bill's assessment?
In your final days,
Madam Speaker,
rushing to pass everything.
we are here to show how our relations in CARICOM have been surrendered. We have surrendered our leadership position. Even though we have aspirations to be a regional financial center. On Tuesday, March, yes, Madam Speaker, it deals with this legislation. This legislation, CARICOM. On Tuesday, March 12, 2019, the EU issued a revised list of CARICOM jurisdictions not adhering to good tax governance. 7 Caribbean jurisdictions have been placed on a monitoring list in addition, having made commitments. We have made no commitments, but committed to undertake reforms by December 2019. According to the CARICOM statement, and I quote, dated March 2019, this renewed attack, they are seeing this as an attack on our sovereignty, that the EU could dictate the legislation in our country. The CARICOM Secretariat sees that as a colonial initiative. This renewed attack on our member states' economic prospects constitutes an infringement of our sovereign right of self-determination in the best interests of the CARICOM people. Moreover, we are concerned that the EU's tax good governance strategy is beginning to border on anti-competitive behavior targeted at the decimation of our international financial sectors in the Caribbean. And they said it is becoming apparent that ECOFIN, that is the group of foreign ministers, finance ministers in the EU, from the 27 states, now 26, are designed to destroy the financial sector in our member states, even as we build resilience in our economic sectors in order to mitigate our inherent vulnerabilities. Given our ambitions to be a regional financial center, one would have expected lobbying efforts from our government aimed at mitigating the negative consequences of the EU blacklisting of CARICOM states. In this regard, my colleague referred to the meeting of CARICOM ministers to Brussels. We were not there. Efforts by opposition members to determine if such a lobby initiative was held and who from Trinidad and Tobago was on that team left with no answers. We note Prime Minister Holness, Jamaica, met Donald Tusk prior to the last CHOGM in 2018 to discuss the inter alia, the EU blacklisting. Nothing from our Prime Minister. We should have engaged a lobbyist to advance our cause. Instead, we spend millions on a democratically aligned U.S. lobbyist in a Republican-led administration.
That's right.
Jesus ages. Talk about gross incompetence 5 minutes, good. We should have held meetings with EU ambassadors based in Port of Spain to advance our interests, Madam Speaker. If those meetings were held, that should have been drawn to the attention of the Joint Select Committee. But, Madam Speaker, while CARICOM is pushing the case against the EU, we are not sitting at the table. And there's a saying that if you're not at the table, you could end up on the menu. That is our position. We are no longer on CARICOM's A team. We are diplomatically adrift, Madam Speaker. Gone are the days when the voice of Eric Williams, in collaboration with Forbes Burnham, in collaboration Normal Manley, were leading figures in the global arena.
What Trump could do.
We hear nonsense like what Trump could do. Well, he showed us what he could do us with Dragon Field. In 2014, we were punching above our weight at the UN Security Council. Remember, for Siparia was co-sponsoring legislation on global terrorism before it became an issue, Madam Speaker. She was encouraging and led the charge for women, increased women participation in politics. But we have an example of slothfulness and incompetence, Madam Speaker. But we did make contribution, significant contribution. It was not changing a comma and a dot and a paragraph. That is an insult to the contribution of the opposition members. That is an insult to member Saddam Hussein, Senator Saddam Hussein, who made significant contribution, and they cannot deny that. And to put it in a comma and whatnot is indicative of the pejorative approach they have to anybody else who does not agree with them, Madam Speaker. We raised in clause 5.2 of the bill, that is the tax information exchange, an order on this subsection shall be laid in both houses of Parliament, Madam Speaker. We suggested a clarification and detailing of the general directions which the Minister may give to the Board of Inland Revenue. We wanted the Minister of Finance out of that equation, so it would be the Board of Inland Revenue dealing with the equivalent in the member state. We requested that, and this was Senator Saddam Hussein's input, and if they're honest, they will admit it was so. He requested, as obtained in FATCA, a person be notified that after some specified period that their information was being shared. In this regard, we sought and obtained a new clause, clause 12.1 and clause 12.2, which spoke to those specific 2 minutes. Madam Speaker, we requested that penalties for unauthorized disclosures under this Act should be consistent with the FATCA Act, specifically that Clause 11B be amended to $250,000. So we didn't want to have one set of penalties in FATCA and a different one with the OECD. Madam Speaker, in closing, even if this legislation gets us off the blacklist, this PNM has a poor record when it comes to implementation. And the Global Forum does not only look at your passing laws, they look at your operationalization of the laws. The second question I have in closing, when will we see the BEPS? What are we getting from the IMF? And what is the status? Finally, apart from this, are there any other threats to Trinidad and Tobago being blacklisted by the EU in other areas? And I asked the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Agriculture, are we subject to any blacklisting regarding deficiencies in our fisheries legislation? In April 2016, Trinidad and Tobago was issued a first warning, pre-identification or yellow card under the EU regulation to prevent, deter, and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. The next step is identification or red card, and then we will be blacklisted. Given this government, given their slothfulness, given their laziness, I don't want to say dunce-headedness. I think all of us pass common entrance, all of us bright, and I withdraw that if it is included in my presentation. But we stand to be, we'll get off of this, and then wake up tomorrow, a hurry-down thing, call Joint Select Committee, no meetings, no attendance, and at the last minute, we come to get the fisheries thing, and they give us a long story about if we don't do this, what fire and brimstone will fall upon the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, in closing, we are fed up. There is a short time remaining. Enjoy your seats over there. For the Lord will rescue Trinidad and Tobago. The time draweth nigh. And I ask you to recognize that if you treat us with scorn, we will not do that to you when we are on that side. We will treat you with respect befitting the loyal opposition of Trinidad and Tobago.
Member for Portis Plain North, St. Anne's.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after that last contribution, I joined this debate wondering what exactly this is all about. And I'd like, through you, Madam Speaker, to remind the population of Trinidad why it is that we're here today to pass this significant legislation. What the consequences of us not passing this legislation are for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because you see, after all of the theatrics, some of which I will get into to point out to the population the purpose behind it, we are still here today in an area where Global Forum is saying that Trinidad and Tobago can stand to lose its correspondent banking. Trinidad and Tobago can end up being de-risked. Trinidad and Tobago, should we continue with this infantile behavior, juvenile theatrics, can stand to suffer our citizens. So what we're seeing here today is a culmination of the last 4.5 years of a strategy by the opposition to delay, to throw out red herring words, and to just try to push Trinidad and Tobago over the proverbial cliff. If we lose correspondent banking, as it is a potential consequence to happen, what it means, I remind the population of Trinidad and Tobago, it means that we can no longer participate in international financial transactions. What does that mean for the man on the street? It means that you can no longer send money away to your family. You can no longer pay your children's school fees. Your credit cards can't be used for international transactions. And these are the risks that we run. This is not a game. So after all the screaming and the shouting and the theatrics and the use of words and turning around for colleagues to smile, clap, and cheer you on, we continue to be at ground zero. So, Madam Speaker, what I'd like to do is use the next few minutes to remind the population how we got here. One of the catchphrases being used continuously is rush. They are pretending as though the government, this administration, has rushed to bring this legislation here. Completely untrue. When we brought the legislation, they screamed, high hell, bloody murder, we need to go to a joint select committee. Because you see, that was always the opposition strategy. Drive everything to joint select committee. They use words like, we will support good legislation. There must be due process. It's not good law. We need to better it. What did the responsible government do? They talk about being democratic. We agreed to the joint select committee, Madam Speaker. And through you, I'm reminding the population of that here today. What we're here today is not debating bills. What we're here today is not going through clause by clause every single one of these 3 bills. What we're here today, Madam Speaker, is to debate and to either support or not support the report of a joint select committee. I have been reliably informed that, quite ironically, maybe even hypocritically, the members from this House, from the opposition who participated in the joint select committee, had very little contribution. And I just heard it confirmed by the member for Naparima. Because what they did is they rode on the coattails of Saddam Hussein, a senator from the other place. But they really had no contribution to make. The joint select committees went on. And I will remind the population, a few months ago when we were really at that cliff's edge, with some FATF requirements, and I'll soon get to the distinction between FATF and Global Forum, because you see, I'll get to that. We came to this house to pass, we had to dissect one of the bills from the Joint Select Committee. We came here. The bill had to be amended to take out all of the provisions that would require a special majority to be passed. You know why, Madam Speaker? And I remind the population, because as usual, the UNC opposition plays this game, carrot on a stick. You can't speak to us that way, you can't treat us this way because we won't support the legislation. It's not legislation for the government. It is not legislation for the PNM. It is legislation for the 41 constituencies in Trinidad and Tobago and the people we are elected to represent. Because you see, at the end of the day, if this important legislation is not passed, Madam Speaker, and we lose correspondent banking and we become the risk, it is the people of Trinidad and Tobago that suffer, not the PNM. So this continuous threatening, and they talk about bullying, the hypocrisy of bullying, they are bullying the people of Trinidad and Tobago because they are telling the people of Trinidad and Tobago, well, if you don't abide by this and if you don't speak to me nicely, I'm not going to pass the legislation, you're not going to get my support for a special majority. It only suffers the people of Trinidad and Tobago. The next thing, spending time counting how many meetings were attended, how many meetings weren't attended, what was done at those meetings, takes us nowhere. You asked for a Joint Select Committee, you were granted the opportunity to sit on a Joint Select Committee, you participated in meetings of the Joint Select Committee. I am reminded by the chairman that when during the vacation period, he wanted to call meetings to do the people's business, to deal with these specific bills, to fulfill the report, he was told no by the opposition. There was mention here this afternoon about a minority report. It reminded me of what happened last week, where we were told again by the opposition of the existence of a minority report that simply does not exist. The same thing here today. This cannot continue. It should not continue. Misrepresenting. I also want to remind the population, our entrance into Global Forum was not under PNM administration. The entrance and obligation to Global Forum was under a UNC administration in 2011. And they did absolutely nothing to progress Trinidad and Tobago towards being in fulfillment of their legal obligations. So all this screaming and shouting about sloth and incompetence takes us nowhere, because the truth is, facts are a stubborn thing. And it was a 2011 government that signed us on to Global Forum. And the fact is that as at September 2015, nothing was done. I have never heard such hollow talk and such ludicrous suggestions as if we were in government in 2017, we would have gotten it done. When the people gave them a chance to be in government, a day that I'm sure many regret, they did nothing. And that is a fact. This government came in, they put the legislation to the parliament. And what happened when the legislation was brought to the parliament? No, we won't support it. We want a Joint Select Committee. So I remind the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the reason we are here today debating a report from a Joint Select Committee is because the UNC asked for it. And these consequences are serious consequences. Mention of CARICOM countries. Everybody in this house has a responsibility, being an elected member of parliament, for a certain constituency in Trinidad and Tobago, to fly the flag of Trinidad and Tobago. Don't wear it here only on your lapel. So to hear the member for Naparima say that he left a Trinidad and Tobago $100 bill in a restaurant somewhere and laughing that when he came back on money, first of all, I don't believe him. But assuming that he's telling the truth, he is laughing at Trinidad and Tobago. It's not a PNM $100 bill. It is a national $100 bill. I don't know if it's signed by Jawala Rambaran or not. The point is, even when PNM is in opposition, and any member on this side wasn't in government, I am certain when we're outside there, we're batting hard for Trinidad and Tobago. Let me talk a little bit about CARICOM countries and why they are all not in a position like us. Because, Madam Speaker, a few months ago, I was sent to the US Congress. At that meeting, it was being chaired to represent the CARICOM. The delegation was being chaired by the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. It was the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, the Minister of Finance of Jamaica, the Attorney General of Barbados, and myself. And we went to speak to members of the Financial Committee in the US House of Representatives. And you know why? Because every single one of those jurisdictions was facing the risk of losing correspondent banking. And they sent their prime ministers and ministers of finance, and they were petrified. They were worried. So we came together as CARICOM. Trinidad went. We are the furthest along in FATF, but today is about Global Forum. So when he tries to mislead, the member for Naparima tries to mislead the country as usual about CARICOM and about us being the worst in the country, it is not true. We are going out there and batting for our CARICOM sister islands, sovereign countries, to ensure they are not de-risked. And this is what we're forced to come here and listen to. Everything is a joke. Everything is a song and a dance. Serious matters that are going to affect the population of Trinidad and Tobago. This continuous abuse of Trinidad and Tobago, I take offense to. This continued attack of Trinidad and Tobago by certain members, in particular the member for Naparima, I take serious offense to. Every single constituent of Port of Spain, North St. Anne's West, I am assured, takes offense to anybody who is sitting on the inside of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and attacking Trinidad and Tobago. So when he uses the examples of other CARICOM countries completely out of context, as I was telling the Minister of Finance, to take a small island, one of our sister CARICOM members, who may be at rate 5, and we are at 100. He's talking about growth of GDP. If you grow from 5 to 10, that's 100% growth. But Trinidad is up here at 100. We are the highest level of GDP in the whole Caribbean. So don't try to twist things and turn them out of context. Instead, be proud of Trinidad and Tobago, right? Our GDP per capita in terms of purchasing power is twice that of Barbados. It is 4 times that of Jamaica. It is higher than every other CARICOM country. But the member for Naparima comes here today to tell us, I leave $100 at Trinidad, $100 down in St. Lucia. Ki. Right? I left that. Trinidad and Tobago's currency is only useful in Trinidad and Tobago. It is only legal tender in Trinidad and Tobago. But I would never, ever, ever, as a citizen of this great Twin Island Republic, degrade my own country. And that is straight out of member for Naparima's playbook. He comes here every single week, week in, week out, and criticizes Trinidad and Tobago. So let the population take note that once again, the member for Naparima has come here and attacked their Twin Island state. And I take offense to that as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. They wouldn't take him in Singapore. The next point that is being made, because you see, they cannot help themselves but always attempt to mislead the population. Making fun of the member for San Fernando West, the Attorney General, who is going to a FATF plenary. A FATF plenary is different to Global Forum. 2 completely different bodies. The Attorney General is going to FATF at the culmination of 4.5 years of hard work along with the Ministry of Finance, other ministries, the technocrats in the Attorney General's office, the police, the FIB, the FIU, all of these organizations have been working hard to clean up the mess that was left behind. And I hope that the Attorney General returns, as he's told us on Juve morning, to tell the country that at the FATF plenary he's gone to attend, he was successful for the country of Trinidad and Tobago. And that it has, and what I am making the point, they keep trying to say that we're rushing this legislation for that meeting. That is a complete falsehood, an attempt, as usual, to mislead the population. The meetings in Paris, the plenary of FATF, have absolutely nothing to do with what we're being called upon to debate here today. What we're called upon to debate here today is the work of a joint select committee that has been going on for months and months and months. That is what we're doing. Global Forum, as they know, is completely separate to FATF, has nothing to do with it whatsoever. So to come and try and mislead the population that this administration is putting pressure, coming at the last minute, completely untrue. No truth whatsoever. But we are now seeing the culmination, Madam Speaker, of the strategy from day one of send a Joint Select Committee. Send everything that requires a special majority to the Joint Select Committee. Work done or work not done, the point is you go to a Joint Select Committee to have the cumulative effect, not only of those in this House, but also of independent senators and opposition senators as well, to try and produce a better piece of legislation. But every single time we come back to the House at the end of it, for what you would expect now to be the joint product, the cumulative effort, the intellectual effort and contribution of all, the country is always dragged down this road, this pathway by the UNC opposition. So, Madam Speaker, I am putting the country on notice of a few things here today, respectfully. If this legislation is not passed, we stand the risk of losing our correspondent banking. We stand the risk of living in the blacklisting. We have found ourselves in an embarrassing position by the same Global Forum and other people in the EU who really don't care about Trinidad and Tobago because they don't know Trinidad and Tobago. They have put us in a category saying that we are tax haven. There is no way Trinidad and Tobago is a tax haven because our tax laws do not favor. We don't have international business corporations. We have no favoritism for offshore companies. We don't even have that type of legislation here. But if we don't pass this type of legislation, that is not new. It is not unique. The country would recall we had to do this with the United States a few years ago. And again, even with that, taken to the brink. That was FATCA. This is almost identical to that regime of FATCA. So, Madam Speaker, I am asking that some level of responsibility returns, some level of care for country, some level of let us do the right thing for the people of Trinidad and Tobago return to this debate because it's the people's serious business we're dealing with here today. Madam Speaker, with those few words, I thank you.
Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, let me put some matters into the public domain. It is a fact that the UNC government joined Trinidad and Tobago to the Global Forum in 2011. That is a fact. It is a fact that the first deadline given by the Global Forum to the UNC government to enact the necessary legislation, this legislation, was January 2012. It is a fact that it was delayed several times through inaction on the part of the former administration. It is a fact that the final deadline given by the Global Forum to the UNC was the 30th of September 2015. It is a fact that up to September 7, 2015, the UNC had not laid any legislation to make us compliant with Global Forum. The only reason we got a new deadline from the Global Forum was the government changed, and the Global Forum recognized that the new government would do what was necessary to prepare the necessary legislation, table it in Parliament, and try to get it passed, which is what we did. Those are the facts, Madam Speaker. And it is also a fact that we are here 4 years later because these bills require a special majority, and as is their habit, honorable members opposite, whenever a bill requires a special majority, as they did with the FATCA legislation, they drag it and drag it and drag it until they think that public perception of them has reached such a low point that they have to eventually give the necessary votes to pass the legislation. When we introduced this legislation, Madam Speaker, they insisted on a joint select committee and then dragged it and dragged it and dragged it for years, as is typical of them. Very typical of them, Madam Speaker. We tried to have this legislation dealt with before the session ended last year. They complain. They're trying to deal with it now. They're complaining, Madam Speaker. They pretended that they have a minority report. That is not true. They indicated in September that there were some issues they wanted to deal with. So what I did as chairman of the committee, recognizing that they didn't want to support the legislation, they were dragging it out and hoping they could drag it through the whole 5 years, because there's something wrong with the UNC when it comes to tax information. There's a problem. Anytime we try to enact legislation that deals with trying to prevent tax evasion and to catch tax evaders, they will not support it, Madam Speaker. There's something wrong with them. And it's the same familiar refrain that they want to protect the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Joint Select Committee, stakeholder consultation, more time, expert consultants, more consultation, more meeting, change the committee, members coming in, members coming out, new senators. There's 2 senators over there like revolving doors. New senator come in, new senator on the committee. That has been their modus operandi for the last 4 years with these very important bills. And they come and pretend that they don't know how important this is. They come and pretend that they don't know that Trinidad and Tobago citizens in Europe are now being prevented from opening bank accounts to conduct business. They come and pretend that correspondent banks in Europe are now refusing to do business with Trinidad and Tobago banks. They come and pretend that Trinidad and Tobago manufacturers and businessmen are having trouble doing wire transfers to the European Union. They pretend that they don't know that, but all their supporters telling them that. But they will come here and play politics and pretend they don't know and pretend that we are trying to scare people and that is no big thing and the sky is not going to fall and there's no problem and there'll be no blacklisting and there'll be no issue. Pretense after pretense after pretense for 4 years, Madam Speaker. 4 years after they signed us up to the Global Forum in January 2011. They signed us up. They knew what the requirements were. The Global Forum told them that you have 12 months, 1 year, until January 2012 to enact this legislation. They had a majority. They had 29 seats. They didn't need us. They could have passed this thing with the eyes closed, Madam Speaker. And they're telling us we're slothful. They're telling us that from January 2011 to June 2015 when the Parliament was dissolved. They're telling us that we slothful. They had 29 seats. They could have come here and ignore everything we had to say
and pass the legislation with the required special majority and make us Global Forum compliant. They could have done that in 2 months, but instead allowed 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015 to run out. And then come here in gallery today and talk about how we slothful. Madam Speaker, there's a time to put country first. A time to put country first. As I said, the tax information exchange agreement with the United States, which they were so worried about, that people will be trapped and their business will be exposed and be all over the street and not fair and against their constitutional rights. And that same FATCA legislation has now been functioning for 2 years. I haven't heard a single complaint from a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago in the 2-year period that their information has been leaked or that they have been prejudiced in any way. It's working seamlessly.
Speaker, I beg to move that this House now adjourn to Friday, the 20th day of February. Madam Speaker, on that day it will be Private Members' Day, so I would like to hear from the member for Point of Peer what we'll be doing, please.
Okay, well, Madam Speaker, can I communicate what will the motion will be doing in 2 days' time, before the end of this week, to the Leader of Government Business?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. The whip has indicated that it will be communicated to you in 2 days' time. Okay?
In that instance, I have no problem with that, but I did not indicate a time as I was waiting for the whip to tell me what he would be doing. But it will be Friday the 20th at 1:30 p.m.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Friday, the 20th day of February, 2020 at 1:30 p.m. All in favor say aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Friday, 20th of February, 2020 at 1:30 p.m.